Magic bouncing back, because I'm literally going to just say, what do you think about Magic? I'm just like, here's this YouTube, boom, there you go.
Well, I have a thing to say before we kind of get into that, which is first, I think how it bounces back will partially depend on how well it adapts to this current moment. And I think people are trying a lot of different kinds of digital performances right now, whether it be, across different platforms, different sizes and different levels of interactivity and stuff like that. And I think part of how it bounces back will depend on how it adapts to this moment. And so in some senses, we don't quite know yet.
So you got Schrodinger's bouncing back right there. You got,
Schrodinger's bouncy ball. It either bounces or it doesn't bounce.
Shoot, man, you have a point with how does an industry pivot, and that will change its outcome, of course. I think that the one thing that I can say is that Magic, in a performance setting, in a live performance setting, is not going to go away like people think, or will bounce back much quicker than a lot of people are anticipating right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Once theaters open back up and stuff, people are going to want to go see Magic shows again. I don't think that demand is going to go away. I will say, I feel like this might be the final nail in the coffin for a lot of brick and mortar Magic shops. I hate to say that, but a lot of brick and mortar shops that don't have big online presences that are now just no business for a couple months. Sure, there's some government assistance and stuff like that, and I'm sure there's some people trying to help out the local shop, but for the people that are still buying Magic, I feel like there's going to be a lot more just oh yeah, just buy it online, because you can't even get down to the local shop. You can't even go there.
Yeah, and a lot of the brick and mortar shops don't have a fantastic online repository or way to even do that. Yeah. It's really just we're playing a game of butterfly effects, essentially.
Yeah.
I think that people will probably be a bit weird-ish with you touching their stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, can I borrow your keys? Can I see your phone for a second? And everyone's gonna be
Yeah, I wonder how that's gonna work. I guess, what's gonna really affect it is how culturally we come out of this. Whether or not people come out of it under the sentiment this was all a sham, this was all, unnecessary. I think that's going to be the overlying principle where people, in terms of how they behave. Because we have people right now saying this is all nonsense. We just need to get back out there. And I feel like that personality is going to just behave literally no different before. Maybe even more brazen at this point in time. Whereas the people that have been a little bit more
yeah, that's fair,
careful and perceptive to what does this mean about the global stability of the ecosystem and all that stuff, what are the larger implications of this, people like that might feel a bit different, I think those are two extremes, but
yeah. I feel like there's going to be, a lot of mainstream stuff is going to come back relatively quickly. A bar that has a walk-around magician, that'll be back relatively fast. Or okay, a formal Magic show at a theater. Okay, people understand, the theaters are back open. Okay, I'll buy a ticket, I'll go to that. I think there are going to be a lot of fringe events that as smaller spaces try and open back up, try and figure out where they stand and how running events works in that new space. There'll be a lot of smaller fringe events of people trying new or weirder stuff that will take a little longer to bounce back, just because partially venues are going to be weirder for longer about what's their liability, what are the rules, what are the regulations at that time, and then people will be oh my god, everything is open again. I don't have time to go to any of the little stuff because I haven't seen any of the big stuff in such a long time.
I do think there will be a lot of frugality coming out of it as well. I think the private gig market is going to take a huge hit. It's gonna be a long time before people are hiring magicians for events or cocktail parties or whatever.
Or there might be a little bump right at the beginning where it's everyone has their big celebration of oh my god, it's over, little bump, and then everyone's okay, cool, now batten down until we've kind of built back up to where we were before the great calamity of 2020.
The thing that I'm honestly, what was that?
I don't know, my whole apartment building just shook. I don't know whether somebody upstairs fell or whether it had a tiny little earthquake.
Oh, earthquake.
Did you just feel it?
Yeah, we got some things moving around here.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's so sad. I feel like in times like this, people that are on the tippity top, the top 1%, and the top, even, you know, translating that to the magic market, to the magicians that are in that kind of sphere, like everything's fine. It really will chop out a lot of the middle. I think a lot of the people that were pretty good, maybe making a living off of it, not like a stellar existence, but you know, decent enough. I feel like that's going to go under. People are going to get
yeah, all the people that hadn't quite committed yet, so they've got something else to fall back on, or who are like pretty solid on it but have their fingers in other stuff, will kind of make it through based on the combination. All the people there's going to be an unfortunate group of people in the middle, who don't quite, and then the people at the top who just like, what do you mean? I have, The real question is, and this is what I hope and what I pray for, which is that a lot of magicians are taking this time to really polish a lot of material and come up with new stuff, so that when we do come out of this, even if the performance space is weird, there's a lot of really awesome new material and new vitality in terms of kind of the creative drive of magic. That's certainly what I hope. I know that I've been talking to a couple of people who have been kind of trying to put in that time, trying to put in that push. You know, I think any major magician who doesn't immediately come out of this with one new major thing to put in their show, and by major, I mean like somebody with a show, you know, if you don't come out of this with at least a new awesome idea for something to be building, then I think you misuse this time.
But, yeah, totally. I mean, I think that one thing that I'm curious about is how to future-proof scenarios like this. I think that honestly, I mean, dude, I was watching documentaries of Bill Gates like 2 years ago was saying like the next big thing is a pandemic, and like there you go, man. And I'm like, this is not the last time. This is going to happen with overwhelming, like with a lot more frequency than we think. As soon as something else comes out that's more deadly, which this is probably the tamest thing you can get with a long incubation period. So like, I'm just trying to future-proof situations where this happens and how can you engage in that world. I think that this leads perfectly into the next topic, which is how to perform magic, how to engage with people in this time. In my opinion, if you have a unique situation like this, how can you use it to your best advantage? Don't translate something that's from the normal world and try to bring it into this world. Try to take something where its essence lies in this bizarre world that we're in. There's a few really interesting concepts in this world. But imagine if I could go right here and touch your face, right? You have your eyes closed, and I touch your head, and you go like, yeah, I felt a touch on my head. What if you did PK touch through a video conference? That would be amazing. It wouldn't even be the same effect. It would be a brand new idea. And of course, I don't think a method exists for that, but you can get close to something like it. And I think that is the essence of it. It's building something that is beautiful in a different way.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think because we've seen a lot of people trying to kind of translate that traditional magic performance space into the digital space, whether it's by having, big performances for lots of people in, Zoom meetings or Instagram Live things or stuff like that. With some success, varied success, depending on the performer and the material and stuff like that. But I think there is a lot more to be said for finding like, well, what's a much more natural way of connecting through these kinds of platforms and medias, instead of trying to translate that interaction into this space. What kind of interaction, what type of interaction is native to this space, and then find out how to put magic into that, how to perform magic there. I think is the much stronger way to go. And luckily, I think for us and for magic in general, the kinds of interactions that I think are much more native to this space are much smaller interactions like this, like one-on-one or small groups. Everyone is having, a Skype call with your family, maybe your extended family. Okay, cool. You yourself, all the people that have done that have noticed how different the feeling of that call is when there's 4 people on it versus when there's 8 people on it. And the kinds of how it is to interact and to comment, and how present you feel and how heard you feel in those kinds of things. And I think it's pushing these interactions to be a little bit smaller, which means the magic has to be a little bit more kind of personal and direct. But also because of the distance, I think there is a drive to like, it can't really be quite as, I don't want to say like hokey, but like you don't quite have the direct personal contact of charisma kind of to carry it through. If the material isn't good, if the connection that you're building with the material isn't strong, then I don't think the digital format does you any favors in terms of trying to foster that and keep it alive. Whereas a lot of people, or there are some performers who their material is fine, their patter is fine, but they're just a very charismatic person, and so they carry off the performance. And I think this kind of format will cut down on that a little bit and force people to say, what is really strong material that I can fit in here? Because I have fewer other crutches to lean on in a lot of ways.
Well, with mentalism, it's interesting to see what are the, something as silly like this, right? This is something that can be done in that kind of a way.
Or even though, like, you could do this one, like.
Yeah, that's true. You could do it. I think the things that are the most fun was, imagine if you could, that's usually you apply it to a person, right? Like you apply something to a person in terms of a touch or something like that, but then they would just apply the touch themselves. Or I'm wondering if you wanted to go for a pure PK touch idea, I'm wondering how much of suggestion and how much of like body sensation you could build up in there. Like if you ask someone to like, that silly thing where you stand in a doorway and then you push your arms this way and then when you exit, your arms want to float. Like I'm wondering how much of that stuff you could take advantage of, where it's just strengthened by the fact that you're alone, that you're not with a performer.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because that's exactly the sort of thing where it's like finding material that fits most naturally and is strongest in this kind of setting. I hope this will also be a moment where magicians perhaps are pushed away from very unnatural looking props even more. I know that's already sort of been the norm and the direction of things, as it were. But like, if you're performing magic literally in your house and you go, yeah, let me just grab this normal thing off my shelf, and you grab a super strange looking plastic, like that's literally a setting where it's like, you put it to the test. Do they believe that that is a normal kind of object that a normal human being would have on their shelf? Or do they go, yeah, okay, cool, that perfectly normal vase you just happen to have there?
Keep a red ball in a blue vase?
Well, like,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, but it really is like, if you're gonna make that magic look natural, you gotta be like, look, I was sitting around my house in quarantine and I realized I had, an envelope and cards, of course, because I'm a magician, and water bottle. And with those three things, we're gonna do, and then magic happens. We'll be able to get away with, I think, as much having like, here's my painted Chinese box that you can't inspect because you're not here, so you're just gonna have to trust that this is normal and definitely actually Chinese and not made by an American illusionist in Las Vegas. Like, and then it does something.
Wondering how you could put the concept of this action on steroids. You know what I'm saying? Like swapping with a Confederate. Oh no, not that.
What?
I don't have blue bees.
It's okay. These are knockoff bees. Beautiful dollar store knockoffs.
Yeah, but to put that mentalism concepts just on steroids.
Oh yeah. Wait, what? I don't know what concept you're talking about.
Well, it's just the classic swap out of an envelope.
This is a little bit more like theoretical, but I think it is interesting. I think this moment also gives magicians a really great opportunity to think about frame and framing in a very literal way. Magicians, I think, don't think about this enough, and I think it's something that like makes people like Darren Brown and stuff like that a real master, is that he is very aware of the frame of the effect, both in the literal physical, what can people see, but also the psychological and mental, where do people perceive the edge of the effect to be? Is this person part of the effect or outside of the effect? Am I, as the spectator, involved in the effect or outside the effect? And I think this gives us a really great opportunity to play with that, both in a literal sense of like frame, is this thing in frame or out of frame, and how can moving it in and out of frame change it? But also like, okay, I'm in this Zoom meeting with you, Jackson, but I know that Helia is listening also. So is she in the frame? If I suddenly asked you to ask her to think of a random number, or asked her, where is that frame? Where does that, does she think she's part of the effect, or does she think she's a spectator? Does she think she's going to experience magic, or does she think she's just helping you? And then vice versa. Do you think that she's part of it? Do you think that she's, so like dual reality stuff becomes really interesting. If you're watching the magician do card stuff, card changes, you view the entire effect as being in their frame. You are outside the frame. But then suddenly, if I ask you to name something and the card changes into the card you name, suddenly you're in the frame. Suddenly the frame of magic has expanded to include you. And that can be a surprising, delightful moment. Because before you were going, oh, okay, it doesn't matter. I'm just watching. He's doing magic over there. But then suddenly you say a card and it appears over there. Suddenly, how did he know what I was thinking over here? The frame now includes my head. And I don't know, I didn't know that before, and I don't know how it got there.
You know what was surprisingly effective was I had a tarot reading over video conferencing. And it was still the exact same experience for me.
Interesting.
Because so much of it was not even about the cards themselves. There has to be, of course, a process, because usually you shuffle or whatever you do, something or other. You have to deal with that, which was dealt with. But then besides that, as soon as the cards are out, it's the same thing. So much of that space is not physical, it's mental. And I think that magic is that way, but I think that a lot of people, or for some reason, I just don't see it translated as well.
I think because a lot of magicians, actually this is a slightly different point, but I think it does speak to what you were talking about. I think a lot of magicians confuse audience, like participation, for audience interaction or audience investment, perhaps. Whereas tarot readings get the person to invest a great amount of themselves without requiring a lot of physical interaction. Sure, they're supposed to mix the cards at the beginning. Once the cards are mixed, just being there, they are invested, they're involved. You do emotional work with them. Many magicians say, oh, well, the audience member will be invested because I asked them to hold on to the card that they picked. But now that you can't have that physical connection, they realize there's nothing connecting this effect to their audience.
That is so true. That is so true. Holy moly. That is really true. Audience, they confuse audience participation with audience investment.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Hopefully,
I wonder, in real life, in person, it does kind of get in, kind of, you know, but over a virtual environment, it has no meaning at all. There is nothing there. Naming a card is zero investment.
I held up this card, this Joker, and then suddenly it changed into a king. And suddenly it changed into a 5. And then I said, no, really, name a card. And you said the 7 of spades. And then boom, it changed into 7 of spades. That I think would be investment. Not even investment for you, but again, the framing thing that we were talking about before, suddenly it includes you. Whereas if I'm like shuffling cards and I say, stop, look at that one, and then it goes back in, you're not invested in that card at all. No. You didn't touch it. You didn't, even the act of picking it feels weird when it's just sort of like, say stop, or like, no.
If I could ban that action, which I have seen, by the way, so many times. I have seen that so many times. I've seen, oh, this, tell me when to stop, or this, tell me when to stop. I'm like, what is going on in this zone? Number one, you realize that there's a lag, first of all. But like if you're there in person, it's kind of something because you're watching and you're, you know, I don't know.
Well, but I think it's a little different. See, naming a card, depending on what happens, that can be the same amount of investment because that's mental investment. It's not it's not relying on anything physical. So for example, that doesn't even feel super fair in person, in regular life. Now you do it over video and it's like you could do anything. So yeah, definitely it exacerbates certain poor tendencies that magic has, I don't know, bred into itself.
Oh, but that actually brings me to an interesting magic trick. You know, like what if you took like an electric deck, right? And you're just like, okay, just tell me when to stop. And you're just like this and you act like you're frozen. And then someone like walks through the frame or something like that. It's like,
sorry. See, that's funny. That I think is great. That I think is super funny. And again, because that plays with frame, where they think the effect is. They think the effect is one thing, the frame suddenly changes, they realize that they've been that the frame is larger than they think because the frame includes the awareness that the performance is happening over this digital media. Yeah, like that's a great effect. That's super funny.
Oh, that is funny.
Right, and then the person walks through the frame and you go, well, you didn't say stop, and then you drop the deck, do a switch out of frame, and you go, okay, fine. Look, you can have this one, you can have this one, you can have this one, you can have this one. What do you want? Like,
that's good.
Super, yeah.
Send it. Put it to print.
That's up there with like having an actual little spinning wheel that looks like the loading icon for like Macs or something. Like physically having one of those and like putting it up and being like, no, swipe it off the screen.
That's kind of cute. I wonder of ways of playing with that. Yeah, but I think that's really what it is. It's like trying to find a way to engage the medium in the most meaningful.
Be aware of it. Like, well, I mean, there's even, because in live performance setting, there's the whole theory that like you should respond to everything that happens in your environment. If car horn honks, reference it. If somebody won't stop coughing in the third row, acknowledge it. And I think it's the same sort of thing. You are engaging with them in this very weird kind of artificial feeling way. So reference it, be aware of it. And that doesn't just mean in passing at the beginning going, I know we're doing this performance a little differently, guys, so stick with me. All right, here we go. That's not actually engaging it. That's just like naming it.
See, these cards represent my internet connection, and these cards represent the future, and these cards are the family that we have. Things can feel all mixed up, but in the end, it all will all come together.
But in the end,
one card, what did you name?
Queen of Clubs? No, you named a card at the beginning of this effect. Yeah, I just named the Queen of Clubs. No, you named a card at the beginning of this effect. Oh, I forgot. I
have a name in mind. Can you write it? Can you take an index card, write it down in the center, and then you're gonna fold it in the four. No, not that way. Fold it in the like quarter. Now rip it. Well, that's good. That's the wrap of that one. Roll credits. Is that gonna be my tagline at the end of everyone?